tiene de jaso kase no ebetoa wo so ene prem to bre emuna ye nche bia beko Jubilee House ye beko Jubilee House helicopter na enya akwanhia no empenfo ye hwehwemu awie omu kirekire mu akire Ghana fo na oba Facebook Nyce Tv Nyce Tv ewo Facebook a obenya ebi ahwe ewo ho saso ana TikTok Nyce 90.7 FM YouTube esia Nyce TV Ghana etabusia ene mene akosu aboaje ahenkra kwa efo na wase ya ye ba bedi komono na yenko Jubilee House emra na helicopter na enya akwanhia no yenko tie mu nkirekire mu no na ewie so a ye bedane abaka kasemo edi amawo etika kire obi no obi so kan kire obi Nyce TV video no etwagu ya obetimi ahwe bi Captain Fojo ena one Ghana fo edi komo e Jubilee House CA Nyce TV yenko Jubilee House emra yeba yebedi komo akaso hase
and systemic factors, sequence of events, and then we came to what we believed strongly was the cause of the accident. For the history of flight, we went before the flight to see what the pilots had been doing. And it's on record that their last 3 flights before the subject flight, the same crew had flown all the 3 flights before on the same helicopter. On the 2nd of August, they came from their base in Takoradi to Accra. It was a Medivac flight 1 hour long. On the 3rd of August, the following day, they did a flight from Accra to Cape Coast back to Accra. 1 hour 20 minutes. It was also a medical evacuation flight, Medivac. On the 4th, they were tasked to go fly Accra to Salman, back to Accra. That was a 2 hour 30 flight. That was a bullion flight, cargo flight. On the 5th of August, they rested. Now, it helps to say here that in Ghana Air Force, there are flying limitations for the crew. You have 10 hours per week maximum, 62 hours maximum per month. Before flight, it's also accepted that if you've had a rest of 8 hours, you've had enough rest and you can go to work. They had in excess of 24 hours rest. On Wednesday, 6th August, the crew for the Z9 aircraft, call sign IceCap, Hotel Romeo, India, planned to execute the task order for the Ministry of Defense. The flight was scheduled to depart at 8 a.m. with an estimated en route time of 50 minutes. The captain delayed the flight due to adverse weather in Accra, Kumasi, and Obuasi. The weather improved about an hour later, so takeoff ended up at 12 minutes, 14 seconds after 9 a.m. Throughout the flight, the altitude changed to avoid low clouds. Now let me explain why this was so. The flight started out being conducted under visual flight rules. Now, if you're flying under visual flight rules, what it means is you're using visual references to navigate. It's a normal way of flying. So they were using visual cues to navigate to go to Obuasi. And so they had to stay away from cloud in contact with the ground. So as the cloud base changed, they changed their altitude. Where they needed to avoid, they would avoid. I'd like you to take a look at these 2 pictures. Now, first of all, these pictures were taken in the environs of where the accident took place. Take note, it wasn't taken on the day of the accident, but it's just representative. The picture on the left shows the morning weather and shows you the visibility, gives you some idea of the visibility on the day. The picture on the right is taken from the same place, looking at the same area, and you can clearly see that you can make out the ridges in the terrain over there. And it's noteworthy that on the day of the flight, this visibility you are seeing that I'm telling you, you can't even see that as you can see. On the day, the visibility was much worse. From eyewitness accounts, the visibility was down to close to 200 meters at some point. This also shows a picture of actual weather from a passenger who was on board the aircraft, just to give you an idea. The weather in the southern Ghana was poor on the day, which delayed departure for about an hour. In Accra, conditions were misty, with visibility of about 5 to 7 kilometers and very low clouds starting at only 700 to 1,100 feet above the ground. While the situation improved slightly later in the morning, the early hours were dominated by haze and overcast skies. In Kumasi, the weather was worse, with drizzle reducing visibility to around 4 kilometers and heavy low clouds sitting just 600 to 900 feet above the ground. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome were available. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome weather were available. There was no formal information on the weather available to the pilots along the flight route. Witnesses reported poor visibility due to fog and rain at Brofuyedru and its environs. Environmental commissions in the Dampier Forest Reserve and its rugged terrain of hills, mountains, created conditions such that over such rugged terrain, you can have turbulence, downdraft, and other phenomena.
Nyce 90.7 FM.
Now to look at this is what we're talking about. This is a known aviation phenomenon when you have such rugged territory. And what ends up happening is turbulent wind currents occur usually around ridgelines, mountains, and hills, and can generate sink rates in excess of 1,000 feet a minute in moderate wind conditions. These sink conditions can often exist well above the barrier that induces the eddies. We assessed the aircraft to see if it was fit for purpose. The helicopter entered the Ghana Air Force Service in May 2015, having been manufactured in 2012. And it reached its 10-year service threshold on 18th May 2025. Aircrafts have periodic checks to make sure that they're fit for service. The Air Force has 25-hour checks, 50-hour checks, and 100-hour checks. The 10-year check for the helicopter is what was mandated for this helicopter. Now, as is usual, an operator, in this case Ghana Air Force, requested from the manufacturer an extension. And it's normal, happens in civil flying, happens with any type of flying. The manufacturer gave a 90-day extension to 18th August 2025. And basically, the helicopter met all the basic safety requirements. That notwithstanding, it's sort of clashed, it sort of met a 100-hour check. So the Air Force also did a 100-hour check on the helicopter before the flight. The aircraft on the day, The aircraft on the day was declared serviceable and duly signed off by both the engineers and the captain. The flight data report indicates that the helicopter was in good working condition. The helicopter, however, did not have some avionic safety enhancements. As I said before, the aircraft was serviceable and airworthy. The additional safety equipment that the helicopter did not have were things like the helicopter terrain awareness system or the enhanced ground proximity warning system, as you may choose, advanced navigation with terrain mapping, an automatic flight control system. And I would say that these safety equipment would have enhanced situational awareness. For instance, it didn't have an autopilot. That's advanced, the automatic flight control system, so that the crew had to manually fly the plane. So it sort of increases workload. Typically, you want to have a plane that has an autopilot. All the civil planes use autopilots, and the workload on the pilots is very low. It gives you the chance to do things and to think easily, and so on and so forth. Despite all this, the aircraft was in a good condition to fly and met all safety requirements. The investigation has recommended strongly for aircraft with these additional safety enhancements to be acquired immediately for the Air Force. To rule out any potential human causes, we also examined the qualifications, experience, and competence of the crew. The captain has a postgraduate certificate in safety and accident investigation from Cranfield University, UK, in 2024. The captain was a qualified FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, commercial and instrument rated pilot from Bristol Academy, Florida, USA, in April 2015, 10 years ago. Within the Ghana Air Force, he was recategorized in March 2025 as a Cat C pilot. That is, a pilot qualified to be a captain on the helicopter, the Z9 helicopter. And he had a green instrument rating. In the Air Force, they have gradings for pilots, categories for pilots from A to D. D being, depends on what you call high and low, D being for the initial, sort of, and then you go all the way to A. It's interesting to note that for quite a while, and as at now in the Air Force, the highest category is Cat C. So the pilot was totally competent to be flying this plane. The co-pilot was also a qualified FAA commercial and instrument rated pilot from Bristol Academy, Florida, and he qualified in April 2023. In December 2024, he was recategorized within the Ghana Air Force as a Category D pilot on helicopter type with a white instrument rating. To further rule out any potential human causes, we examined the medical and psychological records of the crew. A review of the medical and personal records revealed no known medical or psychological conditions in the captain, co-pilot, or technician at the time of flight. All three were described by witnesses as calm, prepared, and professional during the pre-flight activities. Fatigue or medication was not considered to have materially affected their performance on the day of flight. Now to the sequence of events. The flight departed Accra under visual flight rules in marginal weather. The flight to Bofuyedru was uneventful. Bofuyedru is approximately 90 miles from Accra, about 10 miles from Obuasi. As the flight approached Obuasi, visibility deteriorated rapidly due to mist and low clouds. At 9:56, the crew entered IMC, which is Instrument Meteorological Conditions. To the layman, it is they flew into clouds because they no longer could stay away from the clouds, so they flew into clouds and transitioned to IFR. Now, IFR is Instrument Flight Rules. So what it means is they now transitioned from navigating using visual cues to now navigation solely on the aircraft's instruments. The crew then initiated a climb to cross terrain that they were aware of. They initiated the climb to cross the terrain. Seconds before impact, the crew stated that they could see the high ground below, so they had gone over it. Suddenly thereafter, the helicopter that was flying up without any change in its power or in the pitch which we use to go up and down, suddenly lost height and impacted a ridgeline at about 1370 feet above sea level. And this was about 6.5 miles from the destination, and this happened at 9:58. Said all that. Good. Now, the dotted blue line is what the planned track had been. The purple line is what the aircraft actually flew, and that took place because it was avoiding clouds and so on and ended up where it was. Now to our findings.
Nyce 90.7 FM.
Clouds and so on and ended up where it was. Now to our findings. The helicopter was airworthy, but it lacked additional safety enhancements. For instance, the terrain awareness warning system. Now, you know, the terrain awareness warning system, for instance, is predictive. So what it does is it tells you, warns you, it gives you a better picture of the situation and puts the pilots in a better, it gives them, puts them in a position to make better judgments, to be able to see everything and be able to foretell if there are any things that could possibly create a problem. But they lack the additional safety enhancements required for the weather phenomenon over that terrain.
Nyce 90.7 FM.
There was adverse weather, there was limited visibility, there was rising rugged terrain, with this terrain induced complicating factors, and there were no ground-based navigational route aids en route. The investigation would like to say that from everything they gathered, the emergency response was very timely. The fact that the first responders managed to get to the site in about 2 hours was remarkable because the terrain has very steep slopes. It was raining, it was slippery. So it wasn't the easiest thing to do. When we went to the site, it was also raining and it was very slippery. And we struggled using sticks and everything to try to get up there. So looking at everything, we would say very confidently that the emergency response was very timely. The investigation determined that the accident was caused by the sudden loss of altitude and lift due to downdraft. This loss of altitude without change in power or pitch altitude is consistent with downdraft associated with changing environmental conditions over high terrain. In our findings also, we said there's limited national navigational capacity, a capability for en route and remote area weather services. We also looked at training and realized that the Air Force doesn't have much simulator training. We looked at flight monitoring and realized that there was no flight data monitoring also taking place. For flight following and tracking of aircrafts, we realized that it was also not there. There's no secondary surveillance radar, no automatic dependent surveillance broadcasts, or any other real-time tracking of aircraft. Our safety recommendations. There is a definite need to modernize the fleet of the Ghana Air Force. We have recommended that the Air Force acquire modern aircraft with terrain avoidance warning systems and modern navigation systems. That the aircraft should have cockpit voice recorders and flight data recorders, which are the audiovisual capable types. That the Air Force should invest in simulators for recurrent training. That they contract certified aviation weather provider or providers, and that Ghana as a nation should try to have en route navigational aids, especially in remote areas. The Air Force should seriously consider establishing flight data monitoring and en route tracking systems. And finally, we believe that they need to acquire ground support equipment, modernize what they have. In conclusion, the helicopter accident was an unfortunate and sudden weather-related accident. Implementing the safety recommendations will prevent the reoccurrence of future accidents. At this time, before I take any questions, I just want to give a few acknowledgements. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts and the support that the team had from the National Security Secretariat, led by the National Security Coordinator.
On Nyce 90.7 FM.
Eti abusia yakoya ya san abebiem brofo a wetie ni BSS madio no na yentem no bosome enwotwe num ne da na etoso ensia 6 August 2025 helicopter ekotehwe oboa simpotemu ho ya enipa nwotwe ehwere mo kwa na Dr. Manebu amane empenifo enso ka ho a omunyina ahwere mo kwa no committee na omampani John Dramani Mahama epa wo mo se omunyam hwehwemu no anedi abanti yako yekoya yasaba na wakasa bebre yemoboso tofa emfa emma wo mo de dinkan opani a wote ne kan no ono na yesoma one edom se omkoyem hwehwemu no ti yenhye wo Facebook Nyce Tv Nyce TV o Facebook obehu de ye kan ewo ho wo kire se ewo asojafo na omutwi wiemhye ne hyehyeye mu no ewo se odwumani bia no ogina home donhwere nwotwe 8 hours ansana obesan so atu wiemhyen a watimi atu wiemhyen na enipa miensa no a na omutwi wiemhyen no baako mechanic wom mienu nso ye pilot wom no na omodika atu wiemhyen no emprensa omode baako kofa enuro omode bi so kofa enioma ana baako so omosan so de fa passengers edeka ho na 3 times ena na omo etu ansa na omo de omane bu amamo kɔ no yes ɛwɔ saa na wɔtwe no mu no na mmom na ɔmagye ɔmahome 24 hours
nti ahomene ɛsɛ ɔmgye
ɔmagye ama na boroso eti wɔsɛ kɔmugye ɔmahome 8 hours no ɔmugye ɔmahome 24 hours ansa na ɔmukotu helicopter no na mmom no ɛda no a na ɔmukɔ ɔboase no emre na ɛwɔ sɛnka ɔmude tu yomhyɛn no ɛpa ho 1 hour ɔmu delay 1 hour deɛ nti a ɔmantu ɛntɛm ne sɛ na ewie mu nyɛ ɔboase na ewie mu nyɛ wɔ ɔboase kumase ɛne nkran na ewie ma yɛ kusu ana eso ne so petepete ɛwɔ miaye ahodoɔ bi ɛne nti ɛwɔ mu twɛn 1 hour eti ewie mu ɛtete kakra no ansa na ɔmu etu wie mu hyɛn no na ɔmu kyerɛ sɛ emra ɔmu tu wie mu hyɛn no na ɔmu nim weather report sɛ na ewie mu bɔbrɛ ne tibia ne setie enti no ɔmu kɔ ne nyinaa no ɔmu nim sɛ ewie mu nyɛ wohwɛ ewie mu a ewie mu nyɛ nanso sambre na ɔmu nkuta weather report a ɛbɛma ɔmu hu sɛ ɛna ma yɛn nkɔkora anase sɛ de betima kɔ yɛn fa soro anase yɛn fa ase enti no ɔmu anya weather report na ansa na ɔmu tu akɔ ɛna ebie mu nso ewie mu hyɛn bia no ɛwɔ mmerɛ a ɔde yɛ adwuma a ɛwɔ sɛ okɔ na akɔsiesie May 2025 ɛna ne mmerɛ so yɛ ɛwɔ sɛ ekɔsiesie nanso omo ka kire company wo China na omo ye Z9 helicopter ne say omo ye 90 days na August mu 18th August mu na beso na akoye ho adwuma na ansa na wiemhye ni betu no efitafo no ma meka ne sa efitafo na omo ye wiemhye ho adwuma no omo ye bibia mo ho se bibia deda na kwam eye fit yes eye fit say omo betimi ade atu kwan enu nti omo so koye hwehwemu no omo ho se ampa na ewiemhye no emre na etu akono na kyerɛ sɛ bibia deda na akwan mu etina ɛyɛ serviceable ya ɔmo etimi di tu so a ɛyɛ airworthy ya ɔmo di tu kwan a enye na mmom no ewiemhyɛn no abɛfo akadeɛ bi wɔ hɔ a eni bi enti no ayete sɛ bi obi a wotwi manual car ɛne automatic car enye pɛ otumi sɛ nneɛma sesa wɔ esan sɛ helicopter na ɛkɔte hweyɛ no abrɔfo ɛfrɛ bibi sɛ ɛyɛ terrain awareness and warning system eno no say ebi wo wiemhyɛn no mu a etimi eye dede etimi ka kyerɛ sɛ baabi a wokɔfa no ewie mu nyɛ entime ɛfa hɔ nanso ewiemhyɛn no ɔmode kɔ no eni bi enti no ɔmode ɔmadwen ana ɛkɔ na enti no ɔmoduru baabi a ɛwɔ sɛ nka wiemhyɛn no kɔten no eduru baabi a etimi kɔ sorosoro ɛtɔ dan so ana abafom de enti a no ɔmo yɛ saa ne sɛ ɔmo ho sɛ ewiem ayɛ kusu dododo a na ɔmo kɔ wiem enye sa ometimi de akwa akopem enti ni se omuhu omanimu a na omusanso de helicopter na bafom enti na se na omusi kɔ no terrain no omukɔ no omukɔsoro na omabafom esan se na omodoje mununkum na ewo wie mu no ana bie mu nso bibia omofrɛ automatic flight control system your friend autopilot no etoda ubetimi te se na se car no aba no Tesla ne ade driver ni no opekura wonso steam car na akasa betwi car bi won so a umia so a eno akasa be pake awa bra enye wo driver ni na be pake car no na no ewiemhyɛn no eni bi enti no etise driver ni ticket una be chinchin bibia na so ka autopilot system ni bi o mu a enka pilot no kromo ha omho pin ka wiemhyɛn na akasa betimi adane ne ho ewa bra enipa bia emfa ne sa ensom na kadie bi wo ho so a eye modern na helicopter no sambre na etu no so na enibi ana omo se enipa miensa no a na omutu wiemhyɛn no omo se fatase omutu ana na omo qualify ana bibia kyerɛ sɛ eba no suku a omakɔ a eno de bibia di adanse sɛ omo qualify sɛ omo etimi tu wiemhyɛn no o afeyen so omo san so ekyire mu sɛ ye kɔhwɛ sɛ sambre na wiemhyɛn betu no obu ho no mo a na ne tie na ya ana obu ho ana esise ne so na won pese obekɔ ehwemu kyerɛ sɛ na omu nyina ye krado sɛ ombetu wiemhyɛn no etrobie ne wa ye beka sɛ na oyare anaso de duro so anasa na ne tikura pan baby omu nyina na omu aye ready sɛ ombeye adwuma no esan sɛ omu miensa no a omu tu wiemhyɛn no ansa na omu de bɛkɔ oboase na omu aye adwuma bom empressa ya hwe ensi etino na omu aye ready sɛ omu ebɛkɔ akɔye adwuma no ɛna afei so omu kyerɛ sɛ ebo be sɛ nopa 9:56 mu hono no omra omu yeduru oboase no ewiem sɛye kra ewiem sɛye enti no di omu hu ye ne se uduru ba bia epepo no wono a emframa ne mmoten emframa no ebi kɔ wiem ebi bɔkɔ soro ebi bɔkɔ ase ebi nso bɔ ba animu enti omu edane dane omu ho wo mununkum no mu wie ye no omu se pilot omu twiem hye ne ka se omu hu fom na emomu no omu anchim stia omu anya hwe ana helicopter ne sha ase se eteba fom omu edwane mununkum no wie na omu dodge ye na owiehye ne ekɔ no omu afom san ka hwe enye se bi so a nija dumye nija ndum na emom no se na esisinsan wiem no ehye ase se eteba fom ya oye ho hwe a enye yie ena enam so a ewiemhyɛn no eteba fom a enye se omo amutwi wiemhyɛn no fom so ana enye se bia bibi sɛe wɔ soro hɔ hweanse hweanya hwe nanso mframa no a ɛboba fom no ɛhyɛ se ɛtwe wiemhyɛn no ɛde wiemhyɛn no aba fom ana omo san so ɛkyerɛ mu sɛ ɛyade sɛ omo findings no mu no omo hu sɛ enisa advanced system ni bi ɛna emergency response for emra assembly siye na 2 hours omutimi wura akwaye mu ho ekoforo sapepo no omo yade papa 2 hours no esai say omo ankasa no a omo foro omo kɔ ho ekohwehwe ewiem akwanhia ne siwe na omampani soma omo no omo kɔ kwaye mu ho omo ankasa so ekohu sɛne na ehositie ne nsu atokakra oforo pepo ne po a wontumi emu kwaye ne ade na so omo mutimi kwaye ne de emergency response no it was very very timely ya emra omo kwaye no na emra eso ani na omukọ baby a ye train omo amutwi asojafo wiemhyɛn no omo hu se simulator omo ne dodo simulator no enti se wiemhyɛn na akasa na emom otimu a etese de oti wiemhyɛn mu enti no tise bia wo driving school ne de watena yi bi achi omo di bo game ahodo yi bi no eno bi enhyɛda endoso ewo ho ana biem so omo hu se armed forces mu se wiemhyɛn bi tu a omo ntimi track omo ni sa tracking system no a omo betimi e dia track sa anyoma no enti no be ya omo invest wo simulators ahodo mu omo nya voice recorders e wo wiemhyɛn no enti nkomo na omo di wo wiemhyɛn no mu no bibia no hono ma e betima record se obi ka bi a anaso obi kan bi voice recorders ni ade no so na ebi eni e wiemhyɛn no ti omo hwe na omo totobi na afen so omo pɛ omo a omo betimi a check weather ema omo weather report ahodo na omo betimi e dia akɔ na afen so omo establish flight monitoring system ahodo a ebetima bo mu dwumadie enti ne krakra ne se saa mre no a na omo kɔ no na ewiem nye ewiem ye kuso dodo na omo di omo nimde de kɔ ye ne nso no esai se ewiem hye no eni abefo akade ne bia ebetima boa wo mo se fa bonkum fanifa san wachi sifom sinsen wiem anka helicopter na akasa betimi akyere omo niam ahodo a omo nye abefo kwan so no na ebi enimunti no ekoba se omo amutwi wiemhyɛ na akasa na omo de omo adwen enti na ye hwe saa na kyese enema ekoje nsemu enti ewiemhyɛ no akasa de na ehaw bia eni ho se na ebi ka se obi krati bum obi na to bomb bom no we omo ehu bomb bia na emom no omo e de ahye se na ewiem sitie saa da no omo ehu se de nam so ma helicopter no etehweye no eye ewiem a na aye kusu na ensuo toto ene ade no weather situation no eno ane nam so nti a ema helicopter no etehweye
abefo akade no nso ewomu a
eka beboa wo mo anya ko mu duru ba bi mpo a ke betima wo ne wo mo se ma mo nkobiem se men nkobiem a
park bi so kra na o mehwehwe agina po a
obesi na so ni nyina na ebi nim enti no omo de omo adwen ne bibia na ohwe ekwan kro omo fa so twi wiem hye na ekwan e wo so omo fa so teni mpo no omo timi kosoro no maba fom no omo dodge eduru ba bi na se omo hu omo animu a omo kosoro se de be ya omo fa nkopem omo hu omo animu na omo tia ba fom ni nyina no nanka abefo akade de bi omo a enka omo mmeresa ka eyi no computer na ewo wiem hye be ke kansem pi na kire omo so etimedi so nanso akoba ne sa eti no committee ne de omode accident no ahye ewiemu ana enye eno ana omugiri se nam so ntia eye helicopter etehwe nti brofo bebrebe no ene abo ne tofa de ma
eno no abusia ensem no we no age ne nyina na so yento aso kakra mfa mawo ye wi aprem to breka se bono a na ye de esum wo no na no Electricity Company of Ghana mo penifo kokopie mu Public Accounts Committee na mo kodru ho no eje Ghana fo nsem ni nyina ne se ECG dwumako no sikabuti a wom twato ho se wom de di dwuma no wom di sika na manabro enye se wom di amanabro no nso kra no wom tumi a kira de kode poten a wom ne ya wom di amanabro no Public Accounts Committee penifo bisa mom se Madam Chair yate musiska no ye di amanabro a next time ye ni mane mrubiem yate maka yate sisen eno titena ni Edema Public Accounts Committee no editu Electricity Company of Ghana penifo enim sa mo sori a de bia ye to nkane abom ama nanu ya to nkane abom 1% mo aso 1.14% mo aso kro ya ehwe animu say 2025 hwe be nkodu 2029 no de na ya to nkane abom ama na kwakodu wo hanche mu ahanu aduonu enum 225% no say aden wobra munya sika e wa atena ho no mo di ni funfram mo ye sika no basa wo si ore mi mo kakra ye si ne budget a wo mo ye se wo mu do a cleaning cost 2.8 million and mo ye se mo di be yen siesie afi de ko wiase a 2.8 no akodu 10.4 sa sika no cleaning no ahenkwa mu cleaning de enkwa afi consultancy mu kofa consultant na wo be biebie niam so akire mo adwuma no ani so ne farbai ne ade mo ka se mo beboka 40 million Ghana cedi afi ko wie chiri mo boka 58.6 million Ghana cedi no say how could that be possible adena mutimi ya Ghana force mo boy abrosa efe iti se modisika we nyina mismanagement na se ne mo beka se yento anyina mo nkane mu a mo nhwere sika na mudi se ne kwa no munye hoye ansa na mo be print mu e wo customers so.
I remember I gave that block figure of the confirmed budget of 144 million Ghana cedis. They ended up doing a little over 300 million Ghana cedis. So the excess was 189 million Ghana cedis. That was the breakdown. So we felt that if they should clean their house, because the reason why they claim they are increasing tariffs is because they are not raising enough revenue to enable them pay their IPP, the independent power producers, and also take care of other equally important things. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg. There was another where they had collected 11 point something billion, a little over, yes, about 11.9 billion in the cash waterfall mechanism accounts. The cash waterfall mechanism accounts is the accounts where they collect all the revenues and put it in there, and then they pay the IPPs, the independent power producers, so that if you are able to pay them, government through Ministry of Finance will not have to subsidize. And so all these, I mean, they are huge procurement infraction. And our committee has put measures in place such that if it's a procurement infraction, we will refer you straight away to the Attorney General.
Enti mo muhwe mo fie na mo nsese ansa na se mo ka na ye ni sika de be power na mo kane ni sika de koto fa ngo ye ni sika mo so sika kakra mo nya mo di asem mo di aje se mo boga na ka mo so mo pe entumu no se mo hwe na mo nsese ansa na mo be print mo foforo bo e ho
na juma ko from SML Strategic Mobilization Limited Ghana almost so at the special prosecutor Eco Court obekaya Ken of Rata and Penny for who be a Akano, special prosecutor say Bosumiwe or Dombe Court, SI say contract, Yomodima SML no, na or more effort a quite bonnet so. SML so at the special prosecutor Eco Court. Na or per se High Court no ebo special prosecutor Eka America dollars no 28,850,125.5 US dollars. Oya also someone cut 20 million Ghana cedis said general damages ever Emma Womo. The enti omokasa ne say a special prosecutor no any bambo adwumeko ekọ office ekotutu omo fidie ebia na omo efre no say SML Nova Mineral Analyzer any computers ahodo bia omo faaye de koye na emra omo de koye no omo de 25 depot ahodo ni nyina no muntimi enye adwuma bio ameno so omo eboka eno akyere ne so omo kyere mu a omo asan so akopɛ sika foforo ansa na omo timi ahyehye ne ma hodo no a ɛyɛ special prosecutor ema emrante no betutu ye ede kɔ eno enyina eno enti se special prosecutor aba omo ho omo aba abaye gidigide ho abesese omo ne ma betutu omo ne ma kɔ se omo ye mo hwehwɛ mu wa bra ko metima ye hwehwɛ mu ɛwɔ ho no eno se ade se aha wo mo a amoma ntima anyo omo adwuma eni ti omo pese sika pudo we sei ede free omo ɛho eno ti ehwe ne mo se asɛm ne so ɛbɛkɔ akopie mu ɛwɔ court na ma hyɛ ase di na ara se ɛbɛbɔ special prosecutor ka anase onu mom ana owo case
abisa yemfa kasebo no ensi ye no nyina aka bom ama aye nika ye ni so na yemfa sada ema nwumako ahodo bo aye ma wian so ye de ye wiemhya kwanhia kasebo e de babedan wo no ye one family clinic wo se waposo wachiri dompe baby bia ye wo ya wo no mpemu babia no fa kodan mo ni jesam ni se ye de mfidie be hwehwe oni padwam akwa no babia ye wo ye bia no na ni de ebibidro krojin ye de asaw yare hwehwe ye cha kwan aguna so drekom krom police barrier en Latter-day Saint Dan editing hwenim kumase enso ye wo ho asinfo so Mozama Junction na twifo praso ye new market ye ni Pacific filling station no din hwenim 0243 0248 331 Works Bite de aduane pa na nya homka wo se banku ni fante na banku ni nkruma fa wani chimo ho ampesie ben na ope emutuo enso na wani gi ho a fa wani ekire mu wo ho no mo afei emo ebusuafo no waache fried rice jollof rice vegetable rice ni nyina eye Works Bite de mu eden de mu mre ni nyina ye nsadokodoko nso a obenya bi ye wo pizza shawarma burger eno so bu pastor place order na yemfa wo de mro sisi a woni Barabi Sam Junction ye wo ho ena say Charles Kitchen so we hu ye tra kwan 0555 255 565 na yenyo so one family clinic or say bra na afa wo ha no nyina bedan yen wo de ne bia na ye stroke ulcer diabetes pressure rheumatism asthma na sexual weakness a one family clinic go mo France ombe hu afa sorry dan no wo say ope banso dia enye one place I saw do any chere eno no 0545 042121 yebejo so abusia enyimoko ya daroma and yedika sebono ebro evangelist apostle obo and so ewo streaming hono a ohwema onya bi ewo Facebook amafa adwen check akra wa adbeso so ana
bidia bahase na enyinda Barnabas say happy birthday koma Barikatu Abubakar ayobi ye owo pomade asebo DA Basic School Kofi Parliament House as was na any birthday enti no Kofi Parliament House agona bekuma pass ya ma happy birthday Linda Banks yakopon for Crazy Armstrong ye e wa say Inshraba Kumi and afi so prophet owusu di friswedro ma hodwe Benjamin Sam omunyina so messages e wa hanum say mod by Rich BMG afi na na ekwa mo aboaten ne Miss Schools Pelele piaga munyina so ede ebaye
abisia de kase bono ne nyina si na yeda wonso ase papa ase wa kan ye ho ne de nsemi abedan medin akosia aboaje ahenkra akwa A4 awie mene
kwa bena jumo PSA KDP bodu asoka ho ana omo ebo ye chidoma ye de esomwo ye be dwatew hye no so 1